At 62, I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. But on the day I married Linda, the woman who helped me believe in love again, my son Eric stood up in the middle of our vows and walked out. No heart attack, no emergency. He left to comfort his ex, Savannah. She needed him, he said. Not even a text, not even a look back. That night, while guests still lingered with champagne, I sat alone in our quiet kitchen and stared at the empty chair where my son was supposed to give a toast. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just disrespect. It was a choice with consequences. So I made one of my own. But what happened after, that part, you'll want to stay for. Have you ever been let down by your own child? Leave a comment below. Some stories are too heavy to carry alone. My name is Grant Aldridge. I'm 62 years old, and after 5 long years of being a widower, I decided to give love a second chance. Her name is Linda, a retired teacher with a soft voice and a warm laugh. She reminded me of peace. We met at a local volunteer event for veterans, and over time, her presence filled the quiet corners my late wife used to occupy. Eric, my only son, is 35. For a while, it was just the two of us. After his mother passed, we leaned on each other, through birthdays, holidays, and long silences over morning coffee. He was my rock, or so I thought. When I told him I was marrying Linda, he said he was happy for me, said the words, smiled politely too. But I could see it, the hesitation, the way he avoided talking about the wedding after that, like something was stuck behind his teeth. Back when Eric went through his divorce, I remember how broken he was. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. Savannah had cheated on him with a co-worker, then took half of everything. It nearly destroyed him. I helped him pick up the pieces financially, emotionally, every way a father can. But lately I noticed something unsettling. Eric started bringing up Savannah again, not with anger, but with nostalgia. Savannah always made the best cornbread. Savannah loved that old jazz record too. That kind of talk. I didn't say much. He's a grown man, but part of me wondered, was he really over her? And then came the wedding. A new chapter, a new chance at life. For me, and I had hoped for him too. But sometimes, too, the people we love the most carry pieces of their past so tightly they can't see what's right in front of them. And that blind spot, it shattered everything on the day I said I do. Have you ever felt your child was drifting away, even as they said everything was fine? If so, you're not alone. Share your story below. Someone here needs to hear it. At first, I thought I was overthinking it, a father trying too hard to read his son. But as the wedding drew closer, Eric's behavior didn't just feel off. It felt wrong. He stopped asking about the ceremony. When I mentioned Linda's dress fitting or the song she chose for our first dance, he'd nod but look away, like none of it mattered. And then came the strangest thing. He asked me, would you ever take Mom back if she had cheated? I paused. Your mother never gave me a reason to think that way. He nodded slowly like he already knew my answer, but was hoping I'd say something different. That night I couldn't sleep. And then, 2 weeks before the wedding, I caught a glimpse of a name on his phone screen. Savannah. He was smiling as he texted, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. When I asked about it, he shrugged. We've just been talking, nothing serious. I didn't argue. He's a grown man, but deep down I felt a chill. You don't just talk to someone who broke you, unless some part of you wants to go back. Linda noticed too. She told me gently, Grant, I don't want to come between you and your son, but he looks like he's somewhere else. She was right. Even at our rehearsal dinner, while everyone shared stories and laughter, Eric stayed quiet, eyes on his phone more than the people around him. And when I asked him if he was okay, he smiled and said, "I'm fine, Dad, just tired." But his words felt hollow. There's a difference between being tired and being torn. And I was starting to realize my son wasn't just drifting, he was already halfway gone. Have you ever seen someone fall back into the very thing that once destroyed them? Leave a comment if you've lived that moment. Sometimes we need to speak the truth no one else dares to say. The morning of the wedding was calm. I woke up early, tied my best tie, and sat by the window sipping black coffee. Just like I used to when Linda and I first started dating. There was peace in the house. For a moment I thought, maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe Eric would stand beside me after all. Guests arrived, the small chapel filled with familiar faces. Neighbors, old friends, people who had seen me at my worst and showed up to witness my second chance. Linda looked beautiful. She wore a simple blue-gray dress, soft lace at the sleeves, and a smile that could silence the world. The music played, and I stood at the altar, heart steady. Eric walked in just before we started. He wore the suit I bought him years ago. His face was unreadable, but he was there. So I believed maybe it would be all right. Until halfway through the vows, the minister had just said, "Do you grant take Linda?" And then I heard it, a phone buzz. Eric glanced at it, frowned, then stood up, slowly but deliberately. He didn't say a word, he didn't whisper sorry, didn't nod to me, didn't even hesitate. He just walked out, down the aisle, past the pews, out the door. The chapel fell silent. I could feel everyone's eyes shift from me to the doorway, then back to me. I kept standing. I looked at Linda. She didn't cry. She just gave me a look that said, "It's your call." And I made it. I took her hand and said my vows anyway. But inside something had broken. Not the moment, not the marriage, but something between father and son. Have you ever stood in front of everyone and realized the person you love most just walked away? If that moment still lives in you, say something in the comments. You're not alone. I promise you that. After the ceremony ended, people tried to make light of it. Maybe it was an emergency, someone whispered. Maybe he got sick, another said. I nodded politely, smiled where I needed to. But deep down, I already knew. The reception was quieter than expected. The music played, the food was served, but there was an absence, like a missing chair at a family table. Linda handled it gracefully. She made a toast, thanked everyone for being there, and never once brought up what had happened, but I needed answers. That night, when the house had emptied and the kitchen still smelled of leftover cake and roses, I went to Eric's room. He was supposed to stay the night. His bag was still there. His tuxedo jacket hung over the chair. But his phone was gone, and so was he. I checked my voicemail. Nothing. Then I called his number. It rang twice and went to silence. The next morning I called his office. He hadn't checked in. By afternoon I got the truth. From someone I didn't expect. Savannah's cousin, who had been at the wedding briefly, called me. "Mr. Aldridge, I think you should know," she said. "Eric didn't go far. He went straight to Savannah's apartment." I didn't respond. She continued. She called him crying just before the ceremony, said she was having a breakdown. He left everything. For her. That silence I held so tightly inside. It cracked. He didn't walk out to clear his head. He didn't step out for air. He abandoned his father's wedding to comfort the very woman who had betrayed him and torn our family apart. And the worst part, he never called to explain. He didn't even think he needed to. What would you do if your child turned their back on you in the moment you needed them most? If you've ever tasted that kind of silence, share it below. I'll be reading every word. I didn't yell, didn't call Eric, didn't text him. I just sat in the quiet. It's strange what silence does to a man. It doesn't just echo, it rearranges things. And by the time I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee, I already knew what I had to do, not out of anger, not revenge, just clarity. The next morning I called Casper Winthrop, my lawyer of 20 years. He'd helped Linda and me write the original will back when we still believed in legacy and passing down what we built to those we loved. "Grant," he said, "I heard the wedding was beautiful." I didn't correct him. "Casper," I said calmly, "I need to change my will." There was a pause on the other end. "You sure you don't want to wait a while? Let emotions settle?" "No, I'm not emotional. I'm clear." He didn't argue, just set the appointment. That evening, Linda and I sat on the porch, just the two of us. She didn't ask what I planned to do, but when I looked at her and said, "I'm removing Eric," she didn't flinch. She just reached for my hand. "You're not punishing him," she said. "You're protecting what matters." And she was right. My son had made a choice on the most important day of my life. Now I had to make mine. Not out of pride, but because a man's legacy shouldn't go to someone who walks away when it counts. Would you leave your legacy to someone who left you standing alone? If you've ever faced that kind of decision, I'd like to hear it. Leave a comment, because some of us are carrying more than we ever say out loud. It didn't take long. 2 days after I met with Casper, the phone rang. It was Eric. I hesitated before answering, but I picked up. "Dad," he said, his voice tight. "I just got a call from your lawyer." No hello. No how are you. Straight to it. "They said you're changing the will, that I'm being taken out." I stayed silent. "Is that true?" he asked again. "Yes," I said. There was a pause, long enough to feel like a shift in the earth. "Because I missed your wedding?" "Because you chose not to show up for it," I corrected. "You left in the middle of my vows to go to Savannah." She was having a panic attack. "So you left your father's wedding for a woman who cheated on you and destroyed your first marriage?" "She needed me." I took a breath. "And I didn't." He didn't respond. "You know," I continued, "people think betrayal is loud, but it's not. It's quiet. It's when someone you raised walks out and doesn't look back." Eric's voice cracked. "It was just one day, Dad." "No," I said. "It was the day. You're punishing me." "No, I'm just adjusting my expectations." Another silence. Then he said, "You'll regret this. I'll challenge it. I'll prove you're not in your right mind." I didn't raise my voice. "You do what you need to, son, and I'll do what I know is right." He hung up, and in that dial tone, I didn't feel rage. I felt grief. Because now I knew something I hadn't wanted to believe. It wasn't just that he left me. It was that he thought I wouldn't remember. Have you ever had to defend your dignity to your own child? Say something if this struck a nerve. Because sometimes silence isn't peace, it's just pain with a lid on it. Word got out quicker than I expected. By the end of the week, I started getting calls, not from Eric, from them. The extended family, cousins, in-laws, even my older sister from Oregon. "Grant," she said, "I heard what happened, but he's still your son." Still my son, as if blood alone was enough to override character. I listened politely. I didn't argue. But when she said, "You're being too harsh," I finally spoke. "No," I said. "I'm being honest for once." She tried to soften it. "He made a mistake. He made a decision," I replied. "There's a difference." Then came the family dinner. A few relatives stopped by to check in. Mashed potatoes, roast chicken, and judgment served between bites. One cousin leaned in. "Don't you think this is going too far, Grant?" Changing the will? I looked him in the eye. Let me ask you something. If your son walked out of your wedding, mid-vow, would you still hand him the keys to everything you built? He blinked. Well, I mean, it depends on the reason. It does, I said, and his reason was Savannah. The room fell quiet. Linda, sitting beside me, reached for my hand under the table. Not to stop me, just to say, I see you. Because in a room full of voices, I felt alone. It's strange how grief turns invisible once people think you should move on. But some moments you don't move past. You carry them. You just learn how to stand up straight with the weight. Have you ever felt pressure to forgive before they even apologized? If you've ever been told to just get over it by someone who didn't live through it, drop a comment. There's more of us than they think. A week later, Eric showed up, unannounced. I was in the garden trimming back some of Linda's tulips when I heard the car pull into the driveway. He stepped out in a pressed shirt and polished shoes like he was trying to dress the part of a changed man. He smiled nervously. Hey, Dad. I stood still, pruning shears in hand. Didn't expect you. He nodded. Can we talk? We sat on the porch, the same place I had once imagined him giving a toast at my wedding. I just want to say I'm sorry, he began. For what? I asked. He hesitated. For how I left, for how I made you feel. I listened. But something in me waited, and it didn't wait long. I've been thinking a lot, he said, and I want to do better. Call more, visit, help with the house, be there. Then came the line. I just hope this doesn't mean I'm out of the will for good. There it was, the hook. I stared at him. So that's what this is about. No, he said quickly. No, I mean, not entirely. I do want to fix things. But only if fixing things puts your name back on a piece of paper, I asked quietly. He fumbled. Dad, come on, I'm trying here. I nodded slowly. I hear you. I really do. But let me ask you something. I looked him in the eye. If I died tomorrow, and Savannah called again the next day, would you leave my funeral to be with her? He didn't answer right away, and that pause told me more than any apology ever could. Have you ever felt someone's sorry wasn't about you, but about what they stood to lose if you've been there? I'd like to hear your story. Sometimes the most painful truths hide behind the softest voices. I let the question hang there. If I died tomorrow, and Savannah needed you the next day, would you leave my funeral? Eric shifted in his seat, looked down at his hands. Finally, he said, I don't know. That was enough. I stood up, walked to the railing of the porch, and let the cool evening air fill my lungs. You want things to go back, I said, but you're still halfway in 2 lives. He didn't speak, so I turned around. You want to fix this, son? Then make a real choice, not with words, with action. What do you mean? He asked. I looked him straight in the eyes. Leave Savannah. His eyes widened. What? You heard me. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm not telling you who to love, I said, but I am telling you this. There's no way back to this family while you're still tied to the woman who pulled you away from it. Eric stood up, clearly shaken. That's not fair. No, I replied calmly. It's honest. He walked to the edge of the porch, paced once or twice, then turned back to me. You'd really cut your own son out of your life for this? No, I said. You'd be cutting yourself out by the choices you make. He didn't reply. I could see the storm inside him. Pride, shame, maybe even a flicker of realization. But clarity comes slow to those who've been comfortable in confusion. He left without another word, and as I watched him drive off, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Because drawing a line isn't about anger. It's about refusing to keep bleeding in silence. The night Eric left, I didn't slam the door. I didn't pour myself a drink. I just sat on the porch listening to the wind rustling through Linda's tulips and the soft tick of the wall clock behind me. It was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that bleeds, the kind that settles. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to fix anything. Not the past, not my son, not even myself. I had said what needed to be said, drawn a line, not in anger but in dignity, and now all I could do was wait. Eric didn't call the next day or the next, but I wasn't checking my phone anymore. Instead, I started waking up early again, feeding the birds, pulling weeds from the back fence. I even fixed the leaky faucet in the guest room, something I'd been putting off for 3 years. Linda noticed. "You look lighter," she said over breakfast. "I feel clearer," I replied. Because grief doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits across the table from you, waiting to be noticed. And when you finally look it in the eye, it nods, stands up, and walks away. I don't know what Eric will do. Maybe he'll stay with Savannah. Maybe he'll realize what really matters. But that's not my burden anymore. Because love isn't just what you give. It's what you protect. And sometimes protecting love means knowing when to let go. It's been 4 months since that day on the porch. I haven't heard from Eric. Not a phone call, not a message. But oddly enough, I've stopped waiting. Because some chapters don't close with a slam, they just fade to silence. And in that silence, I've learned something. Sometimes peace doesn't come from fixing what's broken. It comes from releasing it, letting go of what hurt you, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for yourself. You see, when we reach a certain age, people expect us to let things slide. Don't make a fuss. He's still your son. Life's too short for grudges, but they don't carry our memories. They don't sit in the quiet rooms where absence feels like weight. They don't bury the vows we wrote. Alone. We do. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've raised someone who forgot where they came from. Maybe you've loved someone who took your love for granted. If so, let me tell you something. It's not too late to draw a boundary, to say, this far, no further, to stop bleeding for people who won't even bring a bandage. Eric may come back someday, or he may not, but if he does, he won't be met with punishment. He'll be met with expectation, not to earn my money, but to earn my trust again, and that is worth more than any inheritance. So wherever you are, if you're sitting in your quiet kitchen or tending your late wife's garden, know this: you're allowed to feel hurt, you're allowed to protect your peace, and you're not alone.